Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Newman family's power finally fell apart like a crumbling cathedral, making loud noises from years of hidden secrets, control and tricky moves that had once felt unstoppable. It was all based on Victor Newman's idea that he could change the world to fit his plans. But on that chilly, charged night in Genoa City, when rumors turned into real facts and those facts locked people up, everything changed forever. The air inside the Newman boardroom was thick and hard to breathe, filled with quiet tension as Jack Abbott stood at the front of the long table. The lights shone off the silver USB drive he was holding tightly in his hand, and his fingers were shaking. Not because he was scared, but because he was excited, proud, and finally relieved after a long and tough struggle. For many years, Jack had been beaten in strength, outwitted, and outflanked by Victor's constant and powerful control. For many years, every story, every try to take control, every act of treachery always ended with Victor remaining strong, not broken like a giant watching over a world he thought was his. But tonight, that power disappeared, fading like embers that are going out. The boardroom door burst open as loud sirens screamed outside, their sharp sound bouncing off the smooth marble walls of Newman Enterprises. Nikki gasped, her hands pressing against her chest, her eyes wide as she realized what was happening, what was being revealed, the unthinkable betrayal not just against the man she loved, but against the very core of the Newman Empire itself. Victor looked at Jack, his eyes full of anger so strong it felt like it could tear down mountains. His jaw clenched, the muscle under his skin jumping, and every part of him wanted to jump on him, break him, and take back control by using all his strength. This time, control slipped away like sand passing through his fingers. Jack plugged the USB into the boardroom computer, his voice calm but sharp, each word cutting through the tension. "This ends tonight, Victor." The overhead screen lit up with encrypted folders, each marked with dates, initials, and keywords that made everyone shiver. Hidden accounts, payoff logs, blackmail files, confessions about illegal purchases, fake medical records, and fake corporate sabotage. It showed a history built not just on ambition, but on criminal manipulation, finally with a real proof. Victoria stepped back, her voice shaking as she said, "Dad, tell me this isn't true." Victor's teeth gritted, but his quiet silence spoke louder than any words of denial. The room buzzed, the lights blinked, and then the security door swung open suddenly, letting in a wave of police officers who stormed into the boardroom, holding their weapons, not in a threatening way, but with a clear sense of power and control. Paul Williams got there first, his face showing a serious look, like he was carrying a heavy past with him. All the old rumors finally turning into real proof after many years. "Victor Newman," Paul declared, voice steady but tainted with sadness, "you are under arrest for multiple counts of corporate fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." Victor, the once untouchable kingpin, stood silent but deadly still, his eyes never leaving Jack's. "You finally did it," he whispered in a quiet growl, his voice full of hate, anger, and a strange kind of respect. "You think you've won," Jack said, stepping nearer. His breath was unsteady, and his voice broke as he struggled with the weight of what he'd set in motion. "This isn't about winning," he whispered. "This is about ending the cycle before it consumes everyone." The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed like a gunshot, the metallic snap cutting through decades of powerful illusions. Nikki fell into a chair, tears flowing down her face, as she watched the man she had stood up for, loved, and forgiven over and over again finally deal with the consequences she had prayed would never happen. Victoria stood there, caught between her loyalty and her anger, and stared directly into her father's eyes. She silently pleaded with him to deny it all, to be innocent, just this one time, but no words would come out. Adam looked expressionless, but a small emotion stirred within him. Maybe it was a sense of justice, or maybe it was fear that the Newman name might actually be ruined. Abby looked really scared and said quietly, "This can't be real." While Nick rubbed his temples, feeling bad about himself, sad, and realizing with a heavy heart that maybe this was something that needed to happen. As the officers led Victor towards the exit, reporters crowded around the glass walls, their cameras flashing brightly, creating a wild rush as the media got excited, sensing a big story from Genoa City's most powerful man who had finally been brought down. In the middle of the confusion, Victor stopped and faced Jack again, his voice calm but filled with an icy sureness. "The story isn't over. You let go of that USB, Jack, and you open doors you can't shut. You think you've revealed me, but you don't know what you've set free." Jack took a deep breath, trying to sound strong even though fear was swirling inside him. "Whatever happens next," he replied, "at least it won't be buried anymore." Victor's smirk carried a sense of gloom and foreboding, a sign that the empire might fall but the monsters created by power never really die. Police forced open the boardroom doors as Victor was taken away, his steps slow and steady, showing he wasn't giving up. The king stood upright even though chains were around his wrists. Nikki cried into her hands. Victoria slid down the wall, her silent despair pouring out. Nick stared blankly into space, the tectonic plates of power shifting beneath generations. After years of war, Jack felt no sense of victory, only a deep fear that he might have gone too far, breaking families apart, tearing alliances apart, and starting fires even worse than the ones he had fought to put out. The USB drive blinked on the screen, files still loading. More secrets ready to blow up lives across Genoa City. Alliances paid for, marriages tampered with, medical lies covered up, secret fatherhood deals arranged, and corporate spying planned like moves in a chess game. This wasn't just Victor Newman's downfall. It was the start of a big reckoning that could shake everyone linked to him. Sirens disappeared into the night as tension inside Newman Enterprises turned into frantic phone calls, urgent legal planning, and fearful guesses. The press outside roared, hungry for details. Social media exploded with theories, outrage, celebration. The board was confused and unsure if Newman would make it through the storm. Through the glass, lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the steel pillars, as if nature was cheering the collapse. Jack stood still, his hands shaking, as he understood the full impact of what he had started. He had ended Victor's rule. But what was the price and how long would it last? Because deep inside, everyone in that room understood one terrible fact. Victor Newman had 9 lives, and every time the world thought he was done, he came back stronger, ready to punish anyone who stood in his way. Even though the handcuffs showed the end, the shadows hinted at worse things to come. Hidden secrets, secret deals made in the dark, and an empire that, if it falls, could start a war that Genoa City has never faced before. The USB drive blinked once more, adding fresh files as the lights in the boardroom grew darker. No matter what came next, it wouldn't bring peace. It would bring fire. As Victor vanished into the night while being taken by the police, Jack felt the first little bit of fear start to grow in his chest. The end had come, but only by letting loose something even more dangerous. The storm outside got stronger as Victor walked through the spinning glass doors, vanishing into the flashing red and blue lights that covered the marble floors inside Newman Enterprises like drops of blood and shame. In the boardroom, the silence he left behind felt heavy and fake, like the calm right before a huge disaster that nobody was ready for. The USB files kept showing on the big screen, uncovering layers of lies spreading like a sickness through every part of Genoa City's rich and powerful, pointing fingers at friends and foes alike. Jack stared, his breath shaky, and felt a deep fear as he realized this wasn't just dirt on Victor. It was evidence of a huge sabotage network that went way beyond Newman Enterprises. Emails came out showing that corporate enemies were working together. Secret papers connected important people to fake companies in other countries, and hidden messages suggested trying to influence local elections, bribing judges, making up medical records for lawsuits, and even hints about a missing person from the past that had been forgotten. Nikki stood there with shaky legs, slowly moving toward Jack with watery eyes, and softly said, "Turn it off, please. Whatever is on that thing, it will destroy all of us." But Jack, though deeply hurt by the loss, couldn't ignore the truth. These secrets were already out, and once revealed, there was no stopping them. Victoria rushed to the computer, desperate to shut down the files, but they wouldn't close. Progress bars kept moving, showing timestamps and names that hinted at dark secrets connecting Victor to actions far worse than just business fights, pushing into areas that went against basic morality. Adam, who was usually calm, felt fear take over his ambition as he whispered, "Dad didn't do all of this alone. Someone helped him." Jack froze. The words sliced through the paranoia as if they were a sharp knife. If other people were involved in Victor's plans, if there were helpers, then sharing this information didn't stop Victor's control. It began a series of events that could bring in more than half of Genoa City. The lights in the boardroom flickered once more, A burst of electricity zapping through the system, as though stunned by the huge amount of truth rushing into the servers. Suddenly, a loud alarm went off, firewall breach detected, and several drives started uploading data automatically to cloud servers all over the world. Jill Abbott rushed into the room a little while later, out of breath, and asked angrily what Jack had done, her eyes growing wide with fear as she saw the files laid out. "Jack," she whispered, voice trembling. "If these accounts go public, companies will collapse. Families will burn." Jack's voice cracked. "We all had choices once," he whispered. "But Victor stepped over the line a long time ago. Someone had to reveal the truth." But deep down, fear crept in. What if Nikki was right? What if stopping Victor also hurt innocent people? Nick hit the table with his fist and yelled, "Enough! We're tearing ourselves apart while Dad sits in a police car smiling, knowing we're doing his work for him." The realization hit. Victor hadn't panicked when he was arrested. He hadn't begged or denied. He'd smiled. As chaos started, Abby ran to the computer and pulled out the USB. But instead of stopping the upload, the system sped up, activating failsafes that Victor had hidden a long time ago. Adam's eyes widened. This wasn't proof that someone was protected. It was something to use against them. A silence spread. Jack felt his stomach drop. Victor Newman kept track of all the crimes, not to cover up any mistakes, but to make sure he had control over everyone involved. Now, with Jack revealing the files, the power was gone, breaking up alliances, protections, and safety measures Victor had created. The USB files weren't what caused Victor's problems. They were the cause for everyone's. Nikki fell to her knees, saying prayers quietly, and held onto the rosary beads very tightly. Victoria grabbed Jack by the collar and shouted, "You don't understand what you've done. Those files implicate judges, state officials, CEOs. If this leaks, a statewide investigation will take over everything." Outside, reporters kept hitting against the glass while police tried to keep the growing crowd under control. Paul walked back into the building, his face showing a clear sense of urgency. "We have a problem," he announced. "Victor hired a lawyer, but he's pushing for talks about getting immunity. Claims the information on that drive compromises national security." Jack staggered, feeling the floor tilt. National security? This wasn't just about companies being greedy anymore, it was being used as a tool in politics. All of a sudden, every phone in the room started vibrating at the same time. News alerts popping up with leaked pieces of the USB. Panic ensued. Jill backed away. Victoria screamed into her phone. Nikki begged Paul to reverse the arrest. Nick stared in numb disbelief. Adam whispered, "Dad had this all planned." Jack felt like the walls were coming in. The empire wasn't falling apart by chance. It was being broken down on purpose, and they were following Victor's last plan. Sirens got louder as secret government cars came up next to the police cars. A cold feeling spread through the room. Victor Newman might have been arrested, but he was even more powerful than ever before. The USB upload reached 99%. Jack wanted to shout, to pull the plug, to reverse everything. Too late. When the clock hit midnight and the upload was done, it marked the start of a new and darker time for Genoa City, where Victor Newman, whether in prison or not, had the power to decide the fate of anyone who ever stood against him. It looked like the end was just the start. Just moments after the last upload was done, the lights in Newman Enterprises suddenly flickered and went out, leaving the boardroom in darkness for a short time. When the emergency lights came back on, they glowed in a sickly red, showing the broken relationships inside. Fear grew stronger. No one spoke, everyone breathed shallowly, and every second felt filled with fear. Because somehow, in some way, Victor Newman was secretly controlling things from behind steel bars, using the very evidence that was meant to ruin him to take back control of his legacy. Phones kept ringing with urgent messages, warnings, threats, and secret demands for money, all sent through encrypted messages. These files spread quickly online, connecting top bosses from businesses, government, and police all over the state. Paul's phone started ringing, and when he picked it up, his face turned pale. His voice shook as he whispered, "Federal agents are taking over. They want full access to every file Jack released." Victoria sank into a chair, tears running down her face as she quietly said, "Dad set a trap for all of us." He expected Jack to act next. Jack stepped back, his hand shaking as he ran it over his face. A deep fear spread through him as he understood he hadn't stopped Victor. He had actually started him. Nikki let out a sudden scream and pointed at the boardroom screen as the last encrypted message showed up. It was a digital calling card with Victor Newman's quiet signature. A red chess king covered in digital blood, along with one line of text. This was never about winning, Jack. It was about survival. People in the room gasped as loud footsteps could be heard coming from outside. The glass doors slid open and agents wearing black tactical gear walked in, telling everyone to lock down the systems right away and take their devices. Then the lawyers came in, yelling at each other, trying hard to make deals for immunity, even though they didn't really know what they were talking about. News alerts confirmed that state financial systems were hacked using old Newman-connected shell companies that were quickly turned on right after the upload, sending millions of dollars to secret overseas accounts. Adam whispered, haunted. Dad did this. He staged his arrest. He wanted to get into the federal system. Jack stopped moving. The realization struck like a death blow. Victor's arrest gave him a chance to talk with the government directly, because now Victor had proof that could bring down much more than just family businesses. The arrest wasn't the fall of a king. It was a strategic move. A sacrifice. A gambit. Now he had the whole world trapped in his cell. Nikki fainted and fell into Victoria's arms as the paramedics hurried over. Jill stepped back into a corner, trembling, and whispered that the Chancellor Winter's accounts had been exposed as well, and if Victor made the investors take their money out, everything could fall apart. Nick dropped his phone hard on the ground, too shocked to understand all the problems it would cause. Paul shouted instructions into his radio, telling everyone to collect all the proof, but the alarm started ringing. They had already arrived too late. Firewalls started to break apart one after another, and data began spreading out quickly. Files containing hidden attacks were triggered, spreading infections to systems throughout the city. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was scorched earth. All the monitors in the boardroom suddenly turned on and started showing live video from the detention center at the same time. Victor sat quietly behind thick glass, his hands folded together, looking strangely calm. He looked up at the camera, creating a moment where the person holding him and the person being held felt connected. His voice came through the system low and clear, saying, "To everyone watching, remember the lesson. Power isn't taken. Those who are ready for everything are the ones in control." Jack felt his legs go weak as Victor moved closer to the camera. "You thought you caught me," Victor continued, his voice going cold. "But I exposed all of you." The feed cut off suddenly, screens going dark, then showing a ticking countdown clock. 48 hours. No explanation. No demands. Just the relentless ticking of a bomb that no one could see. Panic broke out again, with agents shouting orders, executives running away, and legal teams rushing around in a hurry. Throughout everything, Jack was frozen in place, aware that he had set the first domino in motion. As the clock kept ticking without stopping, the truth became clear. Victor Newman might have been arrested, but Jack Abbott had set in motion the final move.